everyone. Thanks for coming back and joining us here today at Shelley Cooks. Today what we're going to do is a chicken and dumpling recipe. And it's not the typical dumplings that I was raised with the dough balls type thing that you put in and steam. These are more like strips, and my husband's family is French Canadian. So they had the strips that they would cut into either strips or like 1-inch cubes type thing or squares. So I'm going to be trying that today. I have to admit I've never done this recipe before, so it's going to be new for both of us. So stay tuned and we'll get started. So the first thing I always do whenever I cook anything, particularly meats, is I always start with a seasoning blend. And it's always the basics. It's usually salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder. So I've got a tablespoon of salt, and I inevitably will have some left, which is what I like. So I'll mix up enough seasoning so that I'll often have some. Today I'm probably just going to have enough for the chicken, but inevitably I'll make some up and I'll have a lot left, and I'll just put chicken seasoning on it. And it'll last me until, I need to do another chicken recipe for some reason. And they vary. For example, with this one, often if I'm doing a roast chicken or something like that, I'll add a combination of flavorings. But I'll also add something like a paprika or whatever to give it a little color. I won't be doing it with this one. So I just added a tablespoon of salt, pink Himalayan, a teaspoon of black pepper, and now I'm going to add a teaspoon of ground sage. Looking at this chicken here and wonder. Honestly, I never measure, so this is new for me to try and measure this so I can give you an idea of what it is. I'm actually going to go with 2 teaspoons of ground sage. And I'm going to add another tablespoon of salt. And so I will probably end up having some left after this, okay? So that's 2 teaspoons of ground sage, 2 tablespoons of salt, a teaspoon of black pepper, and I'm going to add a tablespoon of garlic powder. There we go. That's a tablespoon of garlic powder. A tablespoon of onion powder. Now I have my pan on low, I should mention as well. And so this is something I'll tell you is that whenever I am preparing to fry something or saute or brown something, put your pan on low, heat your pan up well. If it's cast iron, if it's stainless steel, heat your pan up well before you add your oil, and so that it's nice and hot before you add your oil, and there's a less likely chance that whatever you're browning will stick to the bottom of the pan, okay? So I have that on low now, heating up. And I'm going to add a heaping tablespoon of the garlic, by the way, heaping tablespoon of onion powder. And now I'm going to add some poultry seasoning, which is a combination of margarine. It's a combination of margarine, rosemary, sage, and thyme. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of that as well, poultry seasoning. So there we are. I have a couple of other seasonings over here as well. I have bay leaves and I have Savoury. Those I will add after I add the liquid. So the way we're going to approach this recipe is I have a whole chicken here that I actually purchased from a local farmer. And because it's free range, it tends to take longer before it's tender because there are more muscles in it, but it also tends to be 100 times more flavorful than most of the things you buy in the store. So it's going to take probably twice as long to tenderize. So I'm going to brown this off so that we can get some of that flavoring in the bottom of the pan. Then we're going to add some onions and celery into that pan. Put the chicken back in. We're going to add some chicken broth to make the flavor even more full body with the chicken flavor, and water. And we're going to bring that up to a boil and then let it simmer for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours. Once it is simmered, we now have a really good broth for the base of our chicken and dumplings. So now that I have the seasoning mix to start our chicken up, I am actually, and to be very liberal with this, okay? I am actually going to put lots of this on our chicken, fully coated. I don't know about you, but this was a whole chicken that I, by the way, just cut up into pieces. And whenever I'm handling chicken, you know, before I start washing it or anything, I make sure that I have a little spray bottle that is has about that much Javex, and the rest I fill up with water, Javex bleach, and I fill it up with water, and I wash my sink really well with that and rinse it really well with that. Anytime I'm handling chicken, or any meats for that matter, that spray bottle is out. If anything touches my countertop, it's the same thing. And I am one of those people who does believe in washing your chicken. So I know that seems to be some sort of a little thing going around now, but I absolutely wash my chicken. And I wash my chicken in lemon and water, and I dry it well. And if I don't have lemon, I'll use a little bit of white vinegar to wash it. And then the main thing, if you're trying to get a crust on any chicken, is that you need to dry it very well. Whoops, a little generous there, but that's all right. So after we get this chicken all done nicely, I'm doing all of the pieces. I'm browning up all of the pieces. I'm going to simmer every bit of it. And you can do this with just chicken legs or chicken thighs, because the whole purpose of this is to, after the meat is cooked and it's simmered for that hour and a half or however long it takes for it to simmer, after it is simmered for that, I should say however long it takes for it to tenderize, we're going to take all of the meat off the bone, and then we'll start building our chicken and dumpling meal. So this is a perfect fall meal. It's chilly outside today, it's raining, it's damp. So I had no intentions of videotaping this, but I think it's something that maybe someone might be interested in. And if that's the case, then so much the better. So I'm going to take this to the stove, clean up my mess here a little bit, wash my hands, take this to the stove, and we'll start browning it. Okay guys, we have our chicken on, starting to brown up a bit. I am using avocado oil, which I use mostly for any sort of pan frying or anything that I need to do. This is the kind of brown that we want on it. That's going to give us some nice flavor in our pan. Do not overcrowd your pan too much when you're doing this, because it'll actually create a steam, and your chicken will more steam than brown. I've cut these little wing parts off, but I use them as well because there is flavor in that. There's gelatin in the cartilage in there. And so we'll throw it out after we've gotten all the flavor out of it. And after we add our broth and our water. So it's coming along really nicely. We have a couple of more pieces to brown up. And my heat is on medium high, by the way. My stove will be an absolute disaster when I finish this, but that's all right. I have a splatter screen, but I pretty much found it useless. And so medium high heat. This here browns. I just turned it. That's only going to take about another maybe 4 to 5 minutes on the other side. I'll drop the other 4 pieces that I have in, brown them up, and we'll come back. Okay guys, so the celery and the onions have both softened up. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add our 2 quarts of chicken broth in here. So this is the chicken broth that we have canned. It's going to give us a nice chicken flavor. Plus, we're going to add, because I really, when I do cook, I like to cook a lot so that we have lots for leftovers. So I'm also going to add to this 4 cups of water. After I make this broth, I will actually strain it. And so everything comes out of it, and we just have a nice, clean, clear broth. There's our 4 cups of water. We're going to also add a couple of bay leaves to that. Let's do 2 bay leaves. Do that. And I'm going to, I guess I should get a spoon and get an idea of how much I'm putting in. I had some really nice summer savory in my garden this year. So I've ground some of this up. So this here is just about a teaspoon of summer savory that has been ground up. And I'm going to add just another teaspoon of salt to this. And we'll give that a little bit of a stir. And we're going to go, I have the heat on high on this now. And so this is where we're going to put our chicken all back in. Make sure it's all nice and submerged. And when this, we'll keep an eye on this. And when it comes to the boil, we are going to reduce the heat on that. Comes to boil, we reduce the heat on it, and we will let that simmer for an hour before we try it. And when we do try it, what we're looking for is we want to make sure that the chicken is nice and tender and it's falling off the bone. And as I said, this is a free-range chicken that I got from the local farmer. So they tend to be a little bit tougher, but also, as I said, they're much more flavorful. So this is going to take longer than a chicken that you typically buy at the store. So we're just going to let that go now, come to the simmer, and we'll be back. Okay, guys, so our broth has come to a boil, and I've turned it down a bit. So now we're just going to let it just simmer. And we don't want to have it at a rolling boil, because that's really just going to get rid of the liquid, and it's not going to give the meat enough time to flavor the broth. So we just want a simmer, and so we're going to check on it in about an hour and see how that comes along. I would suggest that if it's not a chicken like the one that I have, that I know from cooking it before that they do take a little longer to cook, then you may want to check it after 45 minutes or so. Hi guys, so now our chicken is almost done. So we'll be straining it shortly, but what we're going to do now is the dumplings that I was telling you about. So here I have 2 cups of flour. Into this I'm going to actually add a teaspoon of salt. That's it. This is really simple. It comes together very quickly. So 2 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, which is equivalent to a tablespoon and a teaspoon. There we go. Now we're going to give that a little fluff up and mix up with the fork. And 3 tablespoons of butter we're also going to add to this. Now we're making these a bit ahead, and we're going to refrigerate them while we finish the rest of our broth. So 3 tablespoons of butter, and here I have my grater, and the butter is nice and cold, so it'll grate in nicely in tiny pieces, and we will just use the fork again to make sure that each little piece of butter is coated with the flour. Okay, and you all know how I feel about this, how sharp this grater is. Anyone who's seen me use it before, I am very careful. So that looks pretty good there. I'm just going to use this fork to get it all out, make sure we get every last bit of it. And there we go. At some point we are going to have to get our hands in here, which is nice. And then we can feel what the dough is supposed to be like. So for now we're just moving this fork around and making sure that every little piece of this butter is separated with flour. And that's the good part about grating. So all the little pieces are all the same size. So what we're going to add to this now is a cup of milk, okay? So let's just add the milk, and then we are going to stir it in until we get a nice dough-like consistency that we can put out on our board. This here is quite wet, so I am going to add more flour to it, and this is why I have the extra half cup here. So probably about another 1/4 of a cup or more. It depends, as I always say, when you're working with a dough or a flour, it's so many variables. You know, what is the weather like outside? How warm is it in your house? That sort of thing. So we've got a little bit of a dough here coming together, and we're going to just use our fingers now to clean this bowl out nicely. By the time we finish, there should be very little left there. So, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this makes a beautiful soft dough. There we go. Now, I'm just going to put that in the sink now. And let's pull this together. Do not overwork your dough too much. It's the same as with the biscuit dough, or a pie crust for that matter. If you overwork it, you'll tend to make the product tough. So let's not overwork this too much, okay? You want a nice soft dough that you can roll out. And we're going to roll it out to about 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to cut it into strips, and from that we'll cut it into little squares, okay? So this is coming together really nicely. Let's just clean our hands up. And if your hands are still wet with dough, just use a little bit of flour to clean it up. And then you can mix that flour right into your product, whatever it is. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flour my board, or in this case my silicone mat, and we're going to begin rolling this out, okay? So after I get this rolled out a bit, I'm actually going to use these guards, and these are 1/8 of an inch, and I'll put them on each side, and that'll tell me that I have the proper thickness that I need for these dumplings. You don't need it, that's for sure. You can just guess what 1/8 of an inch is, and if you're a little off or over or under, that's irrelevant. But they do need to be quite thin, just so you know. Okay, let's keep going. And we're just going to keep going, rolling this out until we get a really nice thin. Try to keep it as rectangular as you can, and that way you'll have less of a waste when you're cutting it out. So you're going to cut it out in strips that are about 1 inch wide, and then cut it across again in about 1 inch or 2 inch size squares or rectangles, if that's the case. Okay. So we still have a ways to go, but I'm going to put the guard down now so it'll give me an idea. I maybe should cut this into two pieces, I should say, but that's all right. This is coming beautifully. So now, what we're going to do after we refrigerate these is I'm going to get some carrots, onions, and celery, and I will dice them up and strain my broth, remove the chicken from the bone, strain my broth, and then take a little bit of oil. I will soften up my carrots, onion, and celery. Then I'll add some flour to it and create a bit of a roux. And then I'll add my broth back. And that'll give us the nice creamy, like a bit of a thicker texture like a soup, which is what we're looking for. I'm also going to be using some of my diced canned potatoes, and I'll be adding those at the last minute when I add the chicken and the peas in. And then once everything is in and it's all heated through, I'll add about maybe a cup of half and half, just to give it a little bit more of a creaminess. So, just to let you know where we're going with this. As usual, the recipe will be down below, so no worries about that. We'll make sure that I hope you give it a try though, because I really do like these dumplings. As I said, I haven't made them, this particular recipe before, so I'm kind of excited about it. So here I'm just going to square this up a bit first and make sure that we get some nice, and I may try and re-roll that for the last little bit, we'll see. pizza roller makes it so much easier when you have to, whether you're doing a lattice pie crust or anything like that. The pizza cutter, I should say, makes it much easier. So let's just go ahead. I am definitely not measuring these to make sure that they're an inch. As you can see, some of them are, some of them aren't, and I don't particularly care. As my grandmother would say it'll eat. So that looks fine. We're going to have some that are smaller and some that are larger, but that's all right. I definitely do not have control of this cutter. Now I see why it's very wobbly, but hey, that's all right. Let's keep going. There we are. So now we are just going to pull these up. I have a little small cookie sheet here. I'm going to put them on. I do this to keep the parchment paper. I crinkle it all up. Keep it from moving around when I put it on the cookie sheet. So, because I find that if it's nice and flat and smooth, it actually wants to blow away in every which direction. So, let's just get these all on this cookie sheet. And as I layer them, I may just sprinkle a little flour in between them as well. And here we go. So I've decided to get my offset spatula to maybe give me a hand getting these up off here a little bit faster. They are not stuck. It's just awkward to pick them up off the silicone. And I'm just tossing them on here any which way. As you can see, some are 1 inch, some are 2 inches, and some maybe more or less. But they are whatever. I probably could have put a little more flour on these, under these, but like I said, they really are not sticking because of this pad. I absolutely love this. It's called the Easy Dough Pad, and it's fantastic for rolling out anything which you want to make sure it doesn't stick or that you need dimensions, particular dimensions for. With the circles here for the pie. So there we go. We're getting there, guys. Let's get this rolled out real quick. And we will be a little more generous with the flour underneath for these ones. And we'll see if it helps us pick them up any quicker. Oh yeah, look, that's much better with more flour on the bench. Much, much better. It comes off much quicker. Here we are. Oopsie. So I'm just going to scatter these on top of there as well. We do not need the spatula for these at all. They're lifting off so easily. And I'm going to put these in the refrigerator immediately, and that will keep them from sticking together as they're piled on top of each other here. And we are going to get busy with our vegetables and straining our broth. Okay, so our chicken, I think, is nice and tender. So this is ready to come out. Okay. I'm just going to take these chicken pieces out. Doesn't matter if we get the onions with it or not, or the celery. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? See how that's falling apart beautifully. That's exactly what we need. And our broth is a nice rich brown, so we know it's got some wonderful chicken flavor in it now. So I swapped it out. Here now, we are just going to, I have a strainer in here. And we're going to strain out all of those big pieces of the celery and the carrots, and the onions, I'm sorry, celery and onions, and our bay leaves as well. Now, I'm actually going to strain this yet again, and I'm going to strain it with a cheesecloth to give us a really nice, clear, pure broth. So now we have our cheesecloth all set up over on yet another pot. And here we're going to strain it one more time. Okay. That's the sort of stuff that we don't want, whether it's spices or whatever. We do not want it in the broth. Now, mind you, if you did not want to put this through a cheesecloth, it is not the end of the world. It is totally fine, and it'll taste just wonderful anyway. But this process is the same process that I use when I'm canning a chicken broth or beef broth. I always want to make sure that I get anything strained out, any sort of cloudiness that may cause, you know, cloudiness or something. Sometimes it's just the impurities and things that are in the product you're using, like the chicken or the beef. Okay, that's perfect. So now, from here, what we're going to do is we are just going to add some butter. And then we will add our diced carrots, celery, and onions. Okay, guys, we have some butter in our pan now. I hope you can see that. Yeah. And that is about a little less than half a cup of butter. Of course, I didn't measure it. And into this, I have going 4 carrots, 3 stalks of celery, and 2 medium-sized onions. And these are going to soften up in this butter on the heat. So we're going to give those a stir, turn the heat up to medium-high. So it's looking pretty good. They've softened up nicely. Now what I'm doing is I'm moving it to the side, and I'm just going to add a bit more butter to this. And this is going to be to make our roux with the flour. So if you'd like, you can actually add, if you prefer, you can add avocado oil to this instead of the butter, but this is going to be a large pot of dumplings, so I think if we calculate or add up how much butter will be in each serving, it's not going to be a lot, even though it looks like a lot. So now what we're going to do, I put all of the flour in, but I just took some of it out because I just want to make sure it's not too much flour. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to cook the flour a bit. Okay, we want to make sure that the flour isn't, before we add our broth in, we're going to cook this flour down a bit to make sure that it's, it doesn't have the raw taste. So let's just leave that like that for a bit. We can add the veggies back into it now that the flour has, and we're just going to let it just cook a little bit. And then we'll begin, let's give this maybe another 2 minutes, and then we'll begin whisking in the broth that we took all the time to make. That is absolutely delicious. Start now whisking this broth in about 1.5 cups at a time. And this is going to end up giving us a really nice creamy texture. It's nice and thick. It already looks absolutely beautiful in my opinion, but here. And we're going to add all of that broth in that we just made. So that's nice and now I can just empty all the rest of it in. There we go. And let's give this a nice stir. We still have the heat up on medium-high. This is still going to thicken a fair amount. But when this comes back to a boil, we are actually going to then add in our chicken and our dumplings. And we're going to put the lid on and let that cook for about 10 minutes. Okay, we have the nice boil we were looking for. So these are the potatoes that I actually canned not long ago, and I'm going to put these in. You don't really need potatoes because we have all of the dumplings, and that is going to that's going to be a beautiful starch to put in it. Something that. Now we're going to put in all of that chicken. I should have turned it around so you could see it. We're going to add our chicken. We have some frozen peas here that I'm also going to add, but I'm going to wait until we have everything else cooked through, especially our dumplings. We don't have to cook through the chicken or the potatoes. They really just need to heat through. But we're adding them with the dumplings at the same time because we want them to add the flavor to the dumplings as the dumplings cook, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this, or stir it I should say, this way. It's like poaching eggs, I think. Create a bit of a vortex, and it'll keep them from sticking. So we're just going to do that. I'm going to put some more in here. These are our dumplings that we rolled out. And they're all... So for anyone who's made dumplings before with the, for example, with blueberry dumplings or blueberry duff or anything like that, it's the same thing. When we put these all in, we'll put the lid on and we'll give them 10 minutes or so to cook. This here, let's turn this. Well, you can already see them getting nice and thick. They're looking beautiful already. Wow, that was quick. Chicken skin. Now I'm actually going to, I think, put these in when that comes back to a boil and these cooked for 10 minutes. We'll then come back and put the peas in. I'm going to put the lid on that and let that go for a good 10 minutes and come back. There we go, guys. So we're just going to stir this gently because we don't want to. And now we're going to put these peas in. So that's about a cup and a half of peas. And we still have the heat up on medium-high. And we're going to add this cup of cream in. And that's just good. That's half and half. And that'll just give it a nice creaminess to finish it off. Still looks amazing, I think. Wow. Beautiful. So this is going to be a nice hearty dinner for a cool, rainy day. We'll let this come back up to a boil, put the lid on it, turn it off, and just let it sit for a few minutes. Okay guys, I just wanted to try this, just to see if it needed additional seasonings with salt and pepper or whatever. It is incredible. The dumplings are nice and light, I mean, when you bite into one, it's so smooth and silky. And the chicken is beautifully flavored. Like, I would highly recommend you try this. And if you're used to trying the dumplings the way they normally are with a wet dough or even a dough that's a little drier that you put into a broth, please give these a try. They are absolutely incredible. So thanks for joining me, and I hope that you will try the recipe. It doesn't take long to come together. You just, when your chicken's on, you can prepare all the other things, and it really does not take long. It's a very easy recipe. As you can see, it made a huge serving. So we are going to have it for dinner. We're going to have it for lunch and dinner again, probably a few other times. So thanks so much for joining me again. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. And God bless. Take care.